Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit Relationships and it's by user Uncomfortable Turf. My fiance, 30 male, and I, 30 female, recently got engaged. Our close friend, 30 male, is the opposite of happy. My fiance, Darcy, and I recently became engaged after 4 years together. I could write an entire page about how excited I am, woohoo! But fortunately, this is not my relationship issue. It did not come as a surprise to our friends and family since we already owned a house and a dog together, but everyone is still overjoyed for us, except for one of our closest friends, Collins. Now, for some background information, Darcy and I have a core group of friends from where we grew up. Most of them we have known since childhood. We moved away from that core group a few years ago for our jobs, but we are still within reasonable driving distance, a couple of hours, so we still see them all around once a month. However, in the past couple of years, Collins has not attended most of the get-togethers with all our friends when Darcy and I would be present. So I began to grow suspicious if he was avoiding us on purpose, since he used to be available for all of our friends' get-togethers, and he did not have any serious job changes or life-altering events that would make him busy all of a sudden. Collins and Darcy would still online game together and chat via text, so I attributed it to bad timing when we were visiting and he was simply not available. It still hurt me a bit because Collins and I were good friends growing up, with me even having a crush on him in middle school, but nothing ever occurred between us, and as we got older, I was fine just being friends. He even introduced me to Darcy and encouraged us to go out, so I figured he also only viewed me as a friend. Darcy and I eventually started dating, fell in love, the whole shebang, and all seemed fine and dandy. Then, as I said, in the past couple of years, Collins began to stop coming to most events where Darcy and I were present, so I have not actually seen Collins in several months. He attended a mutual friend's birthday party we also attended this past winter, and we do not talk at all anymore, although he and Darcy still chat periodically. But according to my fiance, that communication has also significantly lessened over the past year. Anyway, shortly after Darcy and I became engaged, we began reaching out to family and close friends to tell them the news, including Collins. According to my best friend, Collins was with her and her husband at their house when they got the news, and as soon as Collins saw the messages we sent to our friends, he stormed out of their house and did not come back for hours. Colin has been living with them as a roommate for the past year. She said she had no idea what that was about, but suggested Darcy reach out to Collins to see what's going on, since the last thing we want is tension within our friend group, especially with Collins living with my best friend and her husband. Darcy tried reaching out and asked if Collins was planning to attend a small get-together we're having with our friends to celebrate, and the only response he received was Collins saying, "I'm not around." Nothing to indicate he's even remotely happy for us. To be honest, I do not care if Collins does not want to ever be my friend again, since he's already been giving me the cold shoulder for over a year, but it's obviously affecting my fiance and it hurts me to see him hurt. Part of me wants to just let the two of them work it out, if Darcy cares to, and the other part of me wants to send Collins a message that in short says, "I do not know what your problem is, but could you please stop being a jerk to my fiance?" Thoughts? Opinions? Well, OP, from everything you've said to us, I would think, or at least my theory is that Darcy is in love with you, and I would even go as far as to say that he's been in love with you for a really long time. And the reason why he's acting the way he's acting is because he's angry that he never took his shot, thus the adult-sized tantrum. Now, of course, that is just my theory, and I'm basing it because you told us that he was the one that introduced you to Darcy and he encouraged you guys to go out. Now, I know that's past behavior, but comparing that to how he's acting now kind of gives me the idea that he was thinking something like, you know, if she truly is meant to be with me, she'll come back to me, or some kind of story like that that would just make him feel better for not taking the shot, and now that he never took it, he's pissed. OP, I don't think this is something that you can fix. I don't think it's something that Darcy needs to fix. This is just Collins taking himself out. There's an old saying that says something like, when somebody leaves without being kicked out, they will come back without an invitation. which I would translate to, just let Collins have his tantrum, kick and scream all he wants, and when he's ready to behave like an adult, let's sit down and talk about this. If we can still be friends after that, great. If not, well, that's life. And what do you guys think about this whole situation, or what would you do if you were in OP's shoes? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. Happy Poodle says, whatever the reason is, a crush he hasn't been able to let go of, some slight from years ago, etc., Collins has been ghosting you for years. He doesn't want to be friends with either of you, and I'd argue that at this point, you shouldn't think of him as a friend. He's gone out of his way to avoid any get-togethers. Don't follow up, let him be, and leave him out of invites and texts from now on. Tom Lover says, I don't know guys, everyone here is saying Collins either has feelings for Darcy or OP. Maybe Collins just doesn't like OP, or is jealous his friend has found his partner and he hasn't, or Collins is just jealous of OP cutting into his friend time with Darcy. There are a myriad of reasons that could be happening here. I would stay out of it, OP, and follow the lead of Darcy on how he wants to handle, including having Collins in your wedding or not. Support your fiancé and don't reach out to Collins. I can see that creating a bunch of unnecessary drama. Hey Apples says, ignoring the obvious theories already posted, I'm going to post an alternate, more basic theory. At that age, it is not fun watching your circle of friends marry and splinter off, especially if you are still single. It's a big, uncomfortable reminder that others are moving on and building a life, while you are stuck in the mud for whatever reason. Maybe you see yourself as wanting to get together to celebrate, but from his perspective, you are rubbing his nose in the mud and highlighting his own problems. Alex T says, he's maybe jealous, or maybe he's just in a crappy place in his life and this is just another reminder of his life being crappy. Doesn't really excuse him being cold to you guys, but it could explain it. I'm not cold to my friends, but I'm also not in a crappy place, and lately I've been thinking, do I even want to meet up with them again this year? So I can tell them all the nothing that has changed and how I'm still stagnating and unhappy with everything? If you want to, reach out to him, not to comfort him about his non-congratulations, but to see if he's alright and if he wants to talk about anything. Additional information from OP's comments. I just assumed he was jealous since Darcy and I are not the only couple in the group to recently get engaged and married. I got the hint from him a while ago that he does not want to communicate with me, so I have left him alone. But I know that Darcy is much more affected than me since this is a close friend of 20 plus years that is all of a sudden not wanting anything to do with him. I know that he wanted Collins in the wedding as one of his groomsmen, but it looks like that will not be happening. I asked Darcy how he was feeling and he deflected. Probably the only time in our relationship that there has been an issue, he did not want to talk out with me. I want to know if there's anything I should do or say. If the general consensus is to not do anything, then I'll just leave it alone and see if Darcy and Collins eventually hash it out. To be honest, in my mind, I dropped him as a friend a long time ago. This post is more for my fiance's sake than my own. We have joked over the years that he's a sociopath, but it's one of those things where you hope your joke is not serious. I had a theory, far-fetched as it may be, that Collins originally suggested that Darcy and I date under the presumption we would eventually break up so he could come to my rescue, so to speak. The only reason this theory even developed is that we know Collins to be the kind of guy who needs to get his way, hence his tantrum. I think he has white knight syndrome, and that's why he's only dated women shortly after they break up with their previous significant others. Alright, well, the community definitely had a lot to give OP to think about, and OP had a lot of context to give us regarding Collins' character and background. Now, as a side note, we saw that some of the commenters saw that Collins might be comparing himself to Darcy and kinda thinking he's coming up short or something like that, and that's why he's upset. I personally think that kind of mindset is not healthy and a bit toxic because it takes your individuality away from you. If that is what Collins is doing, he shouldn't be comparing himself to other people. That's a futile quest. He should be comparing himself to himself from yesterday and seeing if he's doing any better. Because at the end of the day, that's the real benchmark that you can actually influence. Anyways, it's time to move on to the update to see how this story ends, but of course before that, here's another one of my playlists for you to enjoy after the video. Now, let's move on with that update. Well, this past weekend was insightful as to what's been going on with Collins. A close friend of ours, Bingley, gave us the rundown of why Collins threw a tantrum following the news of our engagement. Turns out Collins is in love with me and has been for years, so the engagement was the final thing to push him over the edge, and he no longer wants any contact with me or Darcy until he gets over me. He views us as a package deal and associates Darcy with me. This includes not wanting me to contact him, not wanting Darcy to contact him, and not wanting any invites from our friends if there's an event that Darcy and I will be attending. It asked including him on group texts that include us. He requests that our mutual friends only reach out to him about parties, game nights, random shindigs, etc. if Darcy and I have told one of those friends that we will not be in attendance. Collins also claims that he put Darcy's needs above his own because years back, before Darcy and I started dating, Collins liked me, but once he found out Darcy liked me too, he allowed Darcy to pursue me. I do not believe that for 1 second, but at this point, it really no longer matters why he has been unable to get over me. Bingley reiterated to us that he told Collins he was being an ass, and Collins agreed, but said this was how it was going to be until he gets over his feelings for me. Apparently, Collins also hopes that once he is over me, he can be friends again with Darcy and me, to which we flat out said no, and said Bingley can relay that back to Collins. The damage is done. Even if he became cordial with us again, we could never trust or respect him. To top it all off, he still plans to live with my best friend and her husband, which flabbergasts me because that significantly increases his odds of seeing me. That and my best friend will now be caught in the middle of this because Collins is also requesting she warn him whenever I am coming over to visit, so he can either leave or go hide in his room. At the end of the whole conversation with Bingley, my reply was simply that Collins should see a therapist. Aside from officially acknowledging we are no longer going to be friends with him, Darcy is obviously upset that his close friend of 20 plus years can just cast him aside. But he seems to be handling the news okay and keeps asking me questions about our wedding. Smiley face. OP's edit. It seems people are divided in the comments and some are wondering why I seem to be harboring anger towards him. None of you know him like Darcy and I do, so I would appreciate it if you would not judge the emotions I feel. I am, however, angry because he's hurt my fiancé by dropping him like he's worth nothing. He's put some of our closest friends in a tough spot. No, they do not have to choose sides, but it's kind of selfish to say to someone, hey, I want to be invited to all your parties, but first you need to make sure so-and-so are not coming before I will attend. And he is acting a bit like a child by throwing a tantrum and then telling us how he feels through friends. Like, seriously, be an adult and tell us how you feel to our faces, even if that means saying something like, sorry, due to my feelings, I cannot be around or talk to either of you. Then at least there may be some respect left and a friendship is possible to salvage in the future. I totally understand if a person who has feelings for someone wants to be distant. I get that, but he went about it in a terrible way and hurt my fiancé in the process. Just a couple of weeks ago, my fiancé expected Collins to be standing with him at our wedding, and now they're not even friends. Also, perhaps I should have given more details about Collins as a person. He has been a good friend to Darcy and me for several years, to the point where they called each other brothers. But he can be manipulative at times, where he says or does things to make sure he gets his way. We just put up with it because we would call him out on his BS, like Bingley did when he spoke to Collins about this whole situation, and normally we would all move along. It was one of those friendships where you knew he had a dark side, but you knew he had a good side too, and well, we focused on the good side. Not once in my entire friendship with Collins have I gotten a whiff of him liking me, which is what got to me when he said things like he allowed Darcy to date me, because it made me feel like he's been fixated on me for a long time and chose to hide that from us in a creepy sort of manner. The whole situation is just bizarre to us, and it made me angry that in our moment of happiness, he found a way to turn it into sadness. I think he's doing us a favor, and I understand his need to go no contact. I feel angry for our friends and my fiance. He pulled our friends into this, and he blindsided my fiance with his decision to abruptly cut contact. Yes, no contact is reasonable, but be an adult about how you handle it. And I have spent time around someone I loved, and that love was unrequited. It sucks. So I get Colin's perspective, but if he's been in love with me for at least 4 years, I'm guessing more based on his conversation with Bingley, then why go full no contact now? Darcy and I bought a house together over a year ago, so why not then if the seriousness of a relationship is a trigger? I feel bad he's hurting, but he made this situation about him and demonstrated a lack of trust that I do not believe would be salvageable down the road. Well, OP, even though you're still pissed, and we can tell you're pissed, this is a happy update because, well, Collins needs to deal with whatever he needs to deal with without affecting you guys. You guys just focus on yourself and your wedding and just enjoy and have fun. So here's wishing you both the best in the future and your upcoming wedding. Take care, OP, and thank you for sharing. Now, let's finish this video with a mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance, and it's by user Patient House. Taking the work news to the news. It was a while ago when I was working in a community-based organization. We provided end-of-the-line shelter for people and did rights advocacy in a medium town, 100,000. The salary was low but okay, but most employees were there because they believed in what we did. The main problem was the manager. She didn't act accordingly to the set of values the organization was based on. She was grossly overpaid compared to employees, took everything personal, and made sure we were cut off from the administrators and created an atmosphere where people feared retribution. We were unionized, but after a few months I realized no one was ever filing complaints, even for trivial matters, because they feared she was going to lash back at them. Turns out she had done it to a few people in the past. Once I figured I wasn't going to stay there much longer, I decided to sign all the complaints I could. According to the union, I could sign anything I witnessed, even if I wasn't the target, and figured I would see them to the end and leave. That way, administrators couldn't claim not knowing, and there was a chance for my colleague to have a better work environment. So, of course, the next few months were a living hell. She picked on me regularly. Still, most people sided with me, at least privately, most of them fearing she would do the same treatment to them if they declared it publicly. One morning, she calls a staff meeting and explains that a large number of complaints have been filed in the last month, looks at me, and the cost to settle them or to pay the lawyers to fight them might bankrupt the organization, and everyone is thus at risk of losing their jobs soon. Insert ominous music. Oh. Panic ensues. My colleagues are crying, they're calling their significant others, and a lot of people are begging me to take them, backstating she got the lesson. Some of them are genuinely pissed at me. In my opinion, it was obviously BS made to turn them against me. I mean, the sole emergency housing of a 100,000 people city, annually filled at 115% capacity, would be closing for a dozen complaints where I'm not even asking for money in any form, over legal forms which are usually budgeted in advance. Come on, it's basic fear-brewing schemes. Normally, I would have questioned it during the meeting or tried to reason with them afterward, but that time I decided to comply with the narrative and treat it as true. I left for my break and did what I would have done if we were normally closing, appealing to the public outrage to help us fulfilling our mission. I called the news, told them verbatim the morning announcement, the service hole it would create in the community, the job impact it would have in the city, etc. The local news picked it up. They called the manager and administrators about running the story, questioning how come there were enough complaints to threaten a 35-year-old pillar of community services, asking what the complaints were about, etc. Before 4 p.m. that same day, we had another meeting to explain that we must have misunderstood the first meeting, as the organization was in no way, shape, or form in danger of closing. Sure, we must have misunderstood. Moral of the story, let those who brewed the piss drink it. Well, OP, I'd say that regardless of whether those jobs were really in danger or not, because it was a bluff, crisis averted and you managed it perfectly. Thanks for sharing, OP. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out, so here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later, and also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.